Okay, good. Okay, well, welcome everybody. Thank you for attending this Zoom this morning. We are really excited to have our guest speakers, and thank you all for attending. What we'll do is if you have questions, just kind of hold on to those until the end, and then we'll open it up to discussion and go from there. So our first, and I have to cheat, I have to read. Our first speaker today is Amy Lee. She is with the U.S. Small Business Administration. She's the District Director for Wyoming. In this role, she helps Wyoming small businesses start, grow, and expand by connecting them with the agency's funding, counseling and training, and government contracting programs and resources. She is responsible for the implementation and oversight of all SBA programs in the state. She previously served as a Wyoming Procurement Technical Assistance Center Program Manager, the SBA Senior Area Manager in Juneau, Alaska, and worked for the Wyoming Women's Business Center. She also holds a BS in Biological Sciences from Cornell University. She lives in Casper and Thermopolis with her husband, Tom, and their daughter, Karina. And I am thrilled with this one. She is currently learning to figure skate, much to the amusement of anyone who happens to be on the ice at the same time. I would like to welcome Amy.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that, Erin, and appreciate connecting with everyone today. And I'll be so excited when the ice is back in Casper and I can get back out on the ice again. So thank you. But today what we're here to talk about is all of the resources that the CARES Act has made available to help small businesses. And what I would like to do is begin this with talking about the Paycheck Protection Program. It's been foremost in many people's minds over the last couple of weeks. And ensuring that Wyoming small businesses have had access to these resources has been really a top priority of the financial sector task force. And Governor Gordon was really insightful in setting up these task forces. And I think that because we on the financial sector task force and Mark, who will be speaking soon, Mark Zaback will be speaking soon, has been my co-chair on that, on the banks, loans, and insurance subcommittee under that. We were really organized and we were really aggressive on this program in Wyoming. And I think a lot of it has to do with the way that we worked as a team here in Wyoming. This program, I should mention, is currently in a situation where there's a lapse of appropriations. I imagine that you've heard about this in the news. So we're hearing that Congress is working really hard to make additional funds available through this program. But the way I've got to speak about it now is in the past tense and future tense. So this Paycheck Protection Program offered and will offer, we hope, loans designed to provide a direct incentive for small businesses to keep their workers on payroll. These loans were made by our amazing participating lenders around the state and country, including banks and credit unions, with 100% guarantee by the U.S. Small Business Administration. And they can be for up to 2 months of a business's average monthly payroll cost from last year, plus an additional 25% subject to a $10 million cap. These loans have a maturity of 2 years with a deferral for the first 6 months and an interest rate of 1%. And they don't require collateral or personal guarantees. And the best part is that they'll be fully forgiven if the funds are used for payroll costs, interest on mortgages, rent, and utilities. And so when it comes to how effective our banks and credit unions were across Wyoming, really have to give a shout out to the community banks. They were amazing in their response. They were out there early and they were aggressive. So you can see here that Wyoming, made more than $750 million of these loans, and to more than 7,600 small businesses in Wyoming. That's a lot of small businesses and their employees that will be able to keep working and do some really cool things over the next 8 weeks that this will cover their payroll. And we know there are many more small businesses who were not helped yet by this program. And so we're hopeful that Congress will appropriate additional funding and that we can make many more loans. And so, the agency really made about 14 years worth of loans in 14 days. So the response was really unprecedented, and you'll hear more about other SBA programs in a moment. But Erin, I'm going to turn it back to you and let you introduce Mark.
Okay, thank you so much. And I am trying to get everybody muted unless you are talking, so it kind of helps with the background noise. So if you do have, you can go to the icon down below and do the, wave your hand or thumbs up or something. And like I said, we will do questions and answers at the end. So on to Mark. So Jonah Bank of Wyoming operates on similar principles encapsulated in Cowboy Ethics, a book that is based on the Code of the West. Mark Zaback, president and CEO, said the bank created its own code in an effort to enhance its mission of building a better Wyoming. The code that Jonah Bank operates on is much like the Code of the West, which puts hard work, integrity, and trust above the bottom line. This has helped the bank become a vital part of both the Casper and Cheyenne communities. Mark has been quoted as saying, "It's about working hard, building trust, and following through on commitments." He also says that at a small bank, you wear lots of hats. And I have seen him wear lots of hats. He and the entire team at Jonah Bank work toward making sure the bank and its branches are part of the community, not just in the community. And at this time, I would like to welcome Mark Zaback.
Well, thank you, Erin, and hello, everybody. Want to thank the Chamber for hosting this event today, and I really think we're just in unprecedented times. You think about Monday, and the oil market went into the negative. I mean, it's like almost living in a science fiction book right now with the things that are happening every day. But I really I want to talk just a little bit about the PPP program that Amy did a good job explaining and what it's been like as a community bank on the other side participating in that over the last 3 weeks. That's pretty much all we've done. And then and just a little bit about leverage at the end. But Jonah Bank, our people started when the program came out, we started trying to learn as much as we can and contacted all of our customers who we thought might be eligible for the program. 3 weeks ago right now is when it was starting. And today we've made almost 400 loans in the PPP program here at Jonah Bank for a little over $50 million. And about 3/4 of that money has actually been advanced, and the rest will be out by the end of the week. So $50 million has gone out just from Jonah Bank's involvement to small businesses here in Casper and Cheyenne primarily. But looking inside the numbers of the 50 million and 400 loans, that comes out to about $125,000 a customer. You look at some of the bigger states and those numbers are much larger as far as what the customers were getting. So I think it really shows that these were going to small customers. 67% of those were under 100,000. And right now, if Amy's able to get out the new PPP program here in the next few days, we have 86 more loans in the pipeline, totaling almost $6 million. So I think from a banker's perspective, what's really been neat is just seeing what it's done for our customers. We have one person that's in the lube oil business. He had already laid off 3 of his employees. And with this money, he was able to hire them back, and he's going to try some new things because his business is down 50%. And I think you find that a lot of this is what the program was designed to do, and it's really doing it. I think in most cases, it's giving people the ability to hire back or not lay off, and that's really what this program is designed to do, is to get people 2 months down. Hopefully we'll have a clearer picture of what's going to happen. Kind of to put it in perspective, though, and Amy talked about how they did 14 years of lending in 2 weeks, and it's really true. There are 30 banks, charter banks here in Wyoming right now. We have a total of about just over $5 billion outstanding. We did almost $1 billion worth of loans in 14 days. So it's taken us 100 years to have a portfolio of $5 billion in loans, and we did, almost 20% of that in 2 weeks. So it's been a huge program, but I think whoever designed it, it's just amazing that it all happened in such a short period of time. I want to take a minute too to talk about our local SBA. There are 5 people, 2 of them, Amy and Deb, are here today, but they have a total of 5 employees. And they've just been so helpful in answering questions, and there's been a lot of questions. You can't call this a smooth rollout, so it's amazing. There's every day and every hour there's been new information coming out about the program and how it works. And we're still waiting on information now on the back end, how we're going to look at the forgiveness part of it. So it's been a huge task, but well, I guess, Amy, you did talk about the fact that you did 14 years. Last year, the SBA did 58,000 loans for $28 billion, just to put the numbers there. The other thing, being an old banker, I've been through several of these crises over the years, and the one thing that always comes up is liquidity. And liquidity means having cash and the availability of cash to pay your bills when your revenue goes down. I guess it goes all the way to individuals too. And in most crises, businesses that fail, banks that fail because they don't have the ability to cash flow their operation through the hard times. And that's, again, it's cash or a line of credit. So the one thing I want to encourage the small businesses out there is, as we go through this, nobody knows what it's going to be like 90 days, 60 days from now, but it's important to work with your lender. I know a lot of people are worried about what's going to happen to their business. You have hopefully have a partnership with your bank, and I really encourage you, don't wait till it gets to be a crisis. We know, and we want to work with you. We got to get through this together, and I can't encourage it enough. I know in past crises, sometimes people walk in with their bankruptcy attorney, and they've never even bothered to talk to their bank. And I just really, and we'll have a lot of time for questions here, but I really think whoever your lender is that you've been working with over the years, or even if you haven't, make contact, and there's a lot of resources out there. SBA has some, the SBDC, but we're all going to have to work through this together. Nobody knows how long the tunnel is, but let's work together. So that's all I have right now.
All right. Thank you, Mark, so much for that. And like you said, we will definitely be taking questions. So we'll get to that. Next on our list is Deb Farris. She is a Deputy District Director for the SBA Wyoming District Office. As a 22-year veteran of SBA, Deb endeavors to ensure all Wyoming small businesses and prospective entrepreneurs are aware of SBA programs and services. Deb has oversight of Wyoming's 8A portfolio and government contracting, and works closely with lenders, chambers, small businesses, as well as our resource partners, the Small Business Development Center and the Wyoming Women's Business Center. The best part of my job is visiting with small businesses throughout the state and seeing firsthand the results of our work, says Deb. She lives in Casper with her husband, Tim. That's all we could find on you, Deb. So if you have anything more fun to add, go ahead and I'll have you unmute yourself. All right, let's see. Let me unmute you.
Stay tuned for another day. Thanks for having us today. I'm just trying to share my screen.
Yep, I can see it. We're good.
Okay, great. So my portion of the presentation today is the economic injury disaster loans, or as we so fondly refer them as EIDL. These loans are direct loans from SBA. You don't go to your local bank, you apply online. The application itself is about 4 pages, but it goes very quickly. The terms are 3.75% for up to 30 years with a maximum loan amount of $2 million. The loan amount and terms are determined by SBA, and the payments are based on your ability to pay. The loans are for working capital, which can include payroll costs, accounts payable, a lot of different, anything that's working capital, and it's includes more options than the PPP. The PPP loan is specifically designed to put people back to work. So it's payroll, a little bit of mortgage or rent, and some utilities. So the EIDL is another great option for small businesses for working capital. There's one online application for EIDL and the EIDL Advance, which is what in the media has been called a grant. But what it is the EIDL Advance is the portion of a loan that's forgivable. The EIDL loan is the portion that you would be paying 3.75% for up to 30 years. I hope that makes sense. And if that's not clear, let me know. If you've already applied and you have an application number, your application is being worked in the order it was received. So when and if, I know I have to say if, but when and if the new funding becomes available, you don't have to go back in and apply again. This is just a screenshot of the first page of the EIDL application. And this right up here, the COVID-19 relief.sba.gov, that is the link to apply. If you clicked on that link right now, you're not going to see the EIDL application because of the pause in funding. If you haven't applied for the economic injury disaster loan, the link down, oops, sorry, I'm technically challenged. The link at the bottom of the screen is for a webinar that we did with the Office of Disaster Assistance on applying for an EIDL loan. It's about an hour in length. There are lots of questions and answers at the end of this presentation, and it goes through each page of the EIDL application. So I would strongly recommend that, and I believe we provided the slides to you, right, Erin? I would just strongly recommend if you haven't applied, you take the time to click on that link and watch that recorded training session. At the current time, if you have an EIDL loan, the only way you can check status is by calling the 800 number on your screen or emailing disaster customer service at sba.gov. The local office, unfortunately, we don't have access to that system, so we don't have the ability to check status for you. Believe me, if we could do it for you, we would. And then at the bottom of the screen, I just included some contact information for our local office and for Amy and I think that we really want to spend as much time as possible answering people's questions today. So that's really a brief overview of EIDL.
Thank you so much, Deb. And I'm gonna actually, okay, you did close out. Thank you so much. And so at this time, and thank you for the three of you and giving a brief overview. I know you could each probably go on for hours about what's going on and just the changes, how quickly things are changing. You know, Amy, I'm sure that you are, you know, monitoring things by the moment. So at this time, I would like to open it up for questions. And so you can either unmute yourself, or you can go ahead and type that in the chat box. I do have one quick question. Is there a specific business type that you're seeing more than another that is applying for PPP or for the EIDL loans? And I've got the three of you unmuted at this time.
So I'll take a quick stab, and then Mark, I'll let you add more because you've been seeing the applications directly. But what I would say is I don't think that the situation we're in is really sparing anybody. I mean, I think we're seeing the gamut of small businesses that have been impacted, even beyond those that maybe have been placed under severe legal restrictions or even required to close. Mark, what are you seeing?
I would agree with you. I think the one sector that maybe got missed here is the agriculture sector, because of the nature of their businesses, they just didn't qualify. And I know rural development has some programs, but I'm hoping in this new one coming out that maybe there's money set aside for the agriculture sector. But it's been across the board and pretty much small businesses.
Okay. Questions from anyone else? If you've got a question, please go ahead. Do I see you, Pat? Are you ready?
Yeah. Yes, if I could. Thank you. So this is probably, and it may be for Mark also, but the SBA. So I'm a little confused between the, we've applied and gotten a PPP, but my partner had also applied for the EIDL 10,000, and I've been told on, or I've heard on other conference calls, that if you applied for both and you received the money from the PPP, that basically that 10,000 is basically included in the PPP. If you've got any clarification on that, doesn't seem logical, but who knows? So thank you.
Okay. I'll take that one, Pat, and then Amy, you can add if you would like. So small businesses are eligible to apply for both the PPP and the EIDL. I think there was a lot of misinformation in the press about the EIDL advance. People were saying we're going to get a grant for $10,000. The EIDL advance is very structured. Actually, it's based on the number of employees you report on your EIDL application. So for an example, if you have 5 employees, you would qualify for $1,000 per employee for a total of $5,000 on the advance portion of the EIDL loan. The EIDL loan then becomes your working capital loan, and it's not counted against your PPP as long as you're using the proceeds of each of those loans at different times for different purposes. So if your intent for the idle was to pay your payroll for the 8 weeks of the PPP, then you aren't using the proceeds properly, right? If you use the idle advance or the idle for payroll, because the PPP payroll component didn't start till your loan was dispersed, right? But you had expenses for payroll before that loan was dispersed, correct? Or other types of expenses that would be included in working capital. So as long as you're using the proceeds for both of those programs and not using them for the same thing at the same time, there is no discounted amount for your idle toward the PPP. Does that answer your question, Pat?
Yes, I think so. Thank you. I know my business partner got a confirmation number, but I don't believe he's ever seen, and I've talked to a number of people in the same instance that never actually saw any of the $10,000, but have received the funding on the PPP. Is that typical? Because that's probably been, I'm trying to remember if it's been 3 weeks since that idle program first appeared, or 4 weeks, but somewhere in there. Have you heard of people getting that 10,000 initial funding?
The up to, yes, I have seen that it is trickling through. I think there were, last I checked, about 1,500 individuals in Wyoming that had received their idle advance.
Oh, okay.
The interesting part of that is that some people got an email, and I'm just gonna say this, and I probably shouldn't, but don't cringe, Jamie. Some people got an email and said that they were getting the money. Some people, the money just showed up in their bank account.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if there is you can reach out to us separate from this, Pat, and we have someone in our office who is coordinating like idle status checks as well, even though we can't check status for you if it's been a really long time or there's some hang up somewhere along the way. We're more than happy to try to reach out on your behalf.
Okay, thank you.
And I would just add to that, I think Deb's exactly right on all counts. I think where some of the confusion between the coordination of the idle advance and the PPP program stems from is that as the CARES Act, regulations for the program came out, there was some anticipation that people might receive their idle advance before their PPP loan because they could apply for it before that program even came online. And they didn't want to penalize people who, given a choice of both programs, might say, hey, the PPP is the better option for me, but I already applied for this idle. And so it gave them the option to roll in their idle loan to a PPP loan if they'd received their idle first, and talked about how to true up the forgivable portions of both so that someone wasn't using it for the same purpose at the same time. In practice, it's turned out the other way around, that most people have received if they've applied for both their PPP loans first. What I would say the bottom line is if you're receiving both of those loans, make sure you're working with your lenders, right? Make sure that whoever made your PPP loan is aware that you also had an idle loan, because as guidance comes out on the forgiveness and how to report those expenditures, you want to make sure that they are helping you maintain compliance and that they're aware that you have this other loan so that you're not using the same proceeds for the same purpose at the same time. And on the SBA side too, if you start working with a loan officer on that idle loan and having a dialogue there, make sure they know that you have a PPP loan as well. And I think to Deb's point that people were just finding the money in their bank account, you know, sometimes those emails, they get caught by those spam filters. They might have received an email, but it got caught in their spam or some other reason. And so email is that primary mode of communication. And we're hoping that, you know, we're seeing that additional funds may well come online for that program as well. So keep watching the news, and as soon as if and when both of those programs receive additional appropriations, those systems should start going live shortly thereafter. And hopefully we'll get money from both programs to as many people as we can.
Great, thank you. One of the questions that was typed in the chat is, what types of nonprofits are eligible?
So that's a great question, and one that there hasn't been robust regulatory clarity around. The regulations, they specifically indicate under types of businesses, and I'm going to pull up the interim final rule that was issued on this just to read it to everybody. What it says is either, you know, am I eligible? What do borrowers need to know and do? And it talks about how you're eligible for a PPP loan if you have 500 or fewer employees whose principal place of residence is in the US or are a business that essentially meets the SBA employee base size standards. And you're a small business concern, or you're a tax exempt nonprofit organization described in section 501c3 of the Internal Revenue Code, a tax exempt veterans organization described in 501c19 of the IRC, a tribal business concern described in section 31b2c of the Small Business Act. And so those are the entities that have been specifically called out in the regs, in the interim final rule, the guidance we have. We know that that leaves many other types of very important entities in our communities in limbo. And we're hoping, I mean, it would be amazing if as the program comes back online, we see additional clarity beyond that.
Yes, I believe that 501c6s are supposed to be looked at in this phase 4, which is what a chamber is. But I don't think that that's been approved. Okay, so I have another question here from Joan Brown. It says, if we received the PPP money, the employees' hours have decreased as a result of COVID. Should we pay the employees the same salary as if they would have worked their normal hours?
So I think, Mark, I'm going to let you take that question and how you're going to be looking at the documentation you receive from borrowers and how you'll compare it to what you receive at the end of the program.
And I'm going to just be honest, I have not been involved in a lot of those discussions. We've been so involved on the front end, but we've been telling people that the intent of the program is to keep your employees so they're getting their normal pay for the next 2 months to see what's going to happen. And that's the design. We keep them off unemployment. They keep their benefits. And so that's the intent of the program. I know there are, for example, restaurants, when they're closed down and their people aren't working, some businesses are having a hard time doing that. But the intent of the program is, and 75% of the money does have to be used for payroll. So at some point for the 8 weeks, they're going to have to start bringing them back and paying them if they want their debt forgiven, is how I understand it.
Yeah, I think that's right. And you know, this is an area where, you know, we and our lenders are still awaiting more detailed guidance on how this forgiveness portion is going to work and what documentation that you'll need to provide. A really key component of that is, you know, even if your business is not able to function in the same way it did prior at the moment, there's a lot you can still do. I mean, I could envision a business owner, you know, having strategic planning amongst their team. How are we going to reinvent our business so that we come back better and stronger than before. Maybe we explore a different, business line that we hadn't been able to do, as Mark shared in that example of that small business. Maybe, there might be many things that your business has wanted to get to and hasn't had time to in a really long time. And so I would say, if you're a restaurant, maybe this is the time to explore a new menu or, different options you've always been looking at. I don't think there's a bounds for people's creativity at this time.
Okay. Mark, do you or Deb have anything to add to that before I ask the next question?
I don't.
Okay. All right. So this question says, it was learned last night that 8,000 small businesses had their information compromised. Can you say if this is if it has affected any local businesses, and how can those businesses protect their information moving forward?
So that's a really great question. And the letters have gone out to those individuals that were affected. I know the SBA has offered, and I can't remember the name of the company, but they will be offering monitoring for credit reports for those people that were affected, and they will receive a letter signed by Maria Rote on SBA stationery indicating that that instance happened. I'm only aware of one, but it could have happened to others. I am only aware of one because that person reached out to me and asked me to verify that it wasn't a scam. Amy, do you have other information?
We don't have a list of any impacted businesses, but I know that the information security and the keeping that information safe has been a top priority. And as soon as they found that breach, they immediately implemented much more stringent controls over it. And incidentally, if you've heard or talked to some of your lenders and early on in the PPP program as well, we had a lot of lenders who were really working hard to try to get back in our systems. And that was one of the reasons, the concern for data security, that it took a little bit of time. So if you tried to apply early on and your lender said, well, I can't even get into SBA's system, because the controls on that system are very robust. And so it does take a while for people who hadn't used that to get back in. So we're really hopeful that all of the steps they've taken will ensure that this doesn't happen again. And if anyone receives that letter and wants to verify that it's accurate, they can reach out to me and Deb and the contact information provided.
Okay, thank you. Another question says, as a small business, how would I know if I should apply for the EIDL or the PPP or both? Or what would determine which thing I apply for?
That's such a good question. And, one of the great resources that we have available in Wyoming is the Wyoming Small Business Development Center Network. And we are their federal funding partner at the SBA. The Wyoming Business Council is their state funding partner, and they're hosted by the University of Wyoming. And there is an SBDC office in Casper. I know that many of the participants in this call are in Casper. And Steen Stovall and Cindy Unger can provide that one-on-one business advising, where if you just, and as well as advisors around the state at wyomingsbdc.org. So that's a great resource if you're looking for one-on-one person to talk through the options. So I'll say that first. The second thing I would say is to take a look at what the financial situation of your business is and what your most urgent needs are. So the PPP loan is very limited and specific in its what it will cover. And the intent of the law, as was passed in the CARES Act, was to provide a resource to keep people on payroll and keep people working during the very specific period of time, which would be the next 8 weeks, which is intended to coincide with the period of time when we're doing this so extreme social distancing, and where even businesses have been closed by by government order in places. And so to really help get through the payroll portion of those expenses over the next 8 weeks. So if that's the most important need you have for your business, I would say you sure want to be reaching out to your lender right now if you haven't already applied to that, because the last tranche of funding was $349 billion, and those funds were allocated to businesses who submitted applications to their lenders and were approved by SBA in just 14 days. And so as additional funds come online, we know, and you heard, Mark even mention in this call, hey, I've got a stack on my desk already. And so if you think there's any chance that this PPP loan might be something that you would apply for should the funds become available, I would say probably don't even wait till tomorrow. Call your lender today and start talking about that, and what information do they need, and do they have all your information. Now, we know that businesses are going to have needs beyond just the next 8 weeks, and Mark provided some great suggestions for working with your lender to look at, what can they do? Can they defer some of your loan payments? All of the things you would normally do to preserve cash in your business. Will some of your vendors work with you? Can you stretch out payments over a couple of months instead of what's due in the next 30 days? And if you're in the fortunate position to be able to do so, can you offer that grace, to people who owe you money? How can we work together to manage our cash flow and help each other? So I would say, if you think you may have cash flow needs beyond the 8-week period of time that's covered by the Paycheck Protection Program, then yes, go ahead and consider applying for an EIDL. And I would think it would be a very great time to either be meeting with your own management team or a member of the Wyoming Business Resource Network here in Wyoming, including the SBDC. And that's what they're funded to do, is help you work with those questions. And of course, don't forget talking with your banker. I mean, they've known your business, right? They've seen what your business has done over the past, and they may have really great advice for you on how best to manage cash flow right now.
Okay. Mark, Deb, do you have anything to add to that?
The only thing I might add is, the PPP program has obviously been very popular because the debt is forgiven as long as you use the funds per the program. And it's the only time you don't provide a financial statement, you don't provide collateral. All you do is provide payroll information, and that's the only qualification, plus some certification. So it's a pretty simple loan to apply for. So that's why I think you see most people right now going after the PPP loan.
Okay, thank you. Another question we had was, if the governor extends the recommendation to not open businesses through the end of May, will that have any impact on repayment of either EIDL or PPP?
That's completely separate, and it wouldn't impact the terms of the resources made available through the PPP or the EIDL.
Okay, all right, and that's all the questions. Oh, sorry, Deb, go ahead. Sorry.
That's okay. So I just wanted to add that on the PPP, there are no, there's no disbursement, right? There's no payment for 6 months. And on the EIDL, the payments are deferred for the first year. Okay. So regardless of the fact if he extends it or not, those payments are already basically deferred.
Okay, thank you. And okay, I have no other questions in the chat. So does anybody have questions that's on that are online? Pat, it looks like you have taken yourself off mute. Do you have another question, Pat?
Yes, if I could follow up on the PPP. It's also my understanding on that basically from your disbursement date, you then have 8 weeks. But I'm also to understand when the one question came up about, if you had reduced, say, a employee's salary, but I thought that you had until the end of June or June 28th to bring those people back on payroll in order to be in compliance with the forgiveness portion of the payroll on the forgiveness. Or is it actually 8 weeks from your disbursement date? Or do you have a little bit more time? Because some business, we don't know what May is going to bring. You know, I just see there's an article that Governor Gordon has been looking at, you know, different things on rolling out in May. But do you have further information on that? I'm not sure where the June 28th date came from, but I think it's in some of the literature someplace.
I'll give it my best try on that one, Pat. And I think that the intent is for these funds that you borrow through the PPP to be used on payroll for the next 8 weeks. And we expect that the forgiveness component is going to require you to provide data on what your payroll was, you know, at the end of that period compared to what it was at the beginning. And at least 75% of the funds that you expend through the loan in order for the loan to become forgivable are going to need to be spent on payroll. So you can imagine how, in an extreme example, if someone had, you know, 10 employees on board prior to their getting the loan and then didn't bring them back until the end of June, how it would be impossible for them to spend 75% of that payroll money on those 10 employees during the covered period. So we're waiting for additional clarity on exactly what that means, but also when the regs were rolled out, the program was to be available through the end of June, like that was when it would end. And so there was a conceivable scenario where someone might have applied for a loan on, you know, June 19th or something similar and gotten their loan the next day. And unfortunately, it didn't appear that the first tranche of funding lasted that long. We went into a lapse of appropriations scenario. And so I would say, please keep watching and talking with your lender as we get additional clarity on this particular point, because I think that it could be very problematic for someone hoping to have the loans that were intended to keep people working throughout this period of time if the funds weren't spent that way. And we hope to have additional clarity soon. The best place to go for the up-to-date regs is the treasury.gov site, and new information is being posted there regularly. But I would say definitely keep in touch as your lender and you get more clarity on this, and that will allow you to adjust those business decisions accordingly. But just keep in mind the amount you borrowed, or for anyone, the amount that you borrow and how those funds need to be spent.
Thank you, Amy. And are there any other questions that anybody might have for the three of these speakers before we end this? Maybe, maybe not. Okay, well, it looks like I'm not seeing anybody taking their speakers off of mute or any other questions. Sorry, I do have one more. Sorry. Is there a list of who received loans as public record?
We don't have those data in our office at this point in time, but if Senator Brasso, as I see in the chat, has made mention of that, I would certainly defer to our senator on what information he may have or provide.
Okay, that's great. All right.
Aaron, I might just add on that though, we're hoping to get the information of the financial institutions in Wyoming who participated, and you know, and the details of how many of their customers they were able to take care of. I do know that a lot of the banks really put in a lot of time working with their customers to make sure their applications got in. When this program first came out, we we were concerned that since we were way out here in Wyoming, that the big banks would take all the money before we got in, and that didn't happen. And so we were able to really take care of a lot of Wyoming small businesses. So
That's great. Well, I know that it's definitely appreciated. 400 loans is, that sounds like a lot of hours have been put in, and you're just one bank. And I know that Hilltop also has been doing some of these, as well as I think Platte Valley and a few of the other smaller banks for sure, our community banks, a couple of the larger banks, but I don't know if all of them have or not. So that is, that's phenomenal. And again, you know, thank you for all that the three of you have been doing. I know you've been putting in a lot of hours lately for this. One last call for any questions?
Could I ask one more of Mark? From the small bank perspective, I had heard, and I think the Wyoming Bankers Association's been in contact with legislative leadership, but is there something in the short term that the state needs to address for liquidity issues on some of our small banks, either legislatively or through the SLIB board or something, to make sure our small banks remain stable?
that's a really good question, Pat. 2 weeks ago, through the task force that Amy and I have been serving on, we went to the SLIB board to get an increase in the TDOA program, a temporary increase. And so that money will be used specifically for PPP loans. You can pledge your loans to this fund and you'll get deposits in your bank, and they set the rate at 0.25%. So that will provide liquidity for banks and hopefully credit unions and other financial institutions participating in the state. It doesn't require statutory approval as far as we understand right now. The rules are supposed to be out by May 1st. And really the program is going to come into play on the back end, not knowing what the timing is going to be, because the money that people are getting now is being deposited in the bank, and they'll be spent over the next 8 weeks. So after 8 weeks, the bank's deposits are going to be down, and hopefully the SBA is going to be buying, forgiving the debt and sending us checks. But until that happens, there's always that risk that banks may need some liquidity. So I think it's resolved, and the Federal Reserve has also come up with a similar program. So
Thanks.
we feel pretty good about liquidity.
That's great news. I appreciate you working through that. So thank you, Mark.
The Treasurer's Office was very good, and the elected officials in helping there.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay, any other questions for our guest today? All right, and it looks like Deb wrote that a list of the lenders offering the PPP loans are available on their website, sba.gov/WY. So you can always go there to see which of our local lenders are doing the PPP loans. And with that, again, thank you so much to the three of you for taking time out of your day to join us and to talk to the people that have participated in this. We definitely appreciate it. Although it's not one of our traditional luncheons, we are so grateful that you were able to do this for us today. And with that, again, thank you so much. Round of applause for you all. Thank you again. And everyone, please stay healthy and check back in our website and see what other webinars are coming up. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank
take
you.
care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.